I'm back! Hey, if you enjoyed these videos here in the Audrain Museum Network and you want to see what we're doing at the Audrain Automobile Museum here in Newport, Rhode Island, subscribe. It's easy. Hit the button, press the bell icon to be notified when we put up great new content, and become a part of the family. You won't regret it. Welcome to the Audrain Automobile Museum in Newport, Rhode Island, and our new exhibition, The Magic of Monaco. This exhibition, which runs from December 14th, 2024 through March 9th, 2025, takes us into a magical place, Monte Carlo and Monaco, and its relationship to the incredible world of cars. Of course, I think that anybody who is at all familiar with cars knows about the Monaco Grand Prix, one of the oldest continuous Grand Prix on the Formula One calendar, and also the Monte Carlo Rally, legendary for its influence, its power, its history. And of course, there's the city itself, which is all about glamour and beauty and elegance. And this exhibition, which also highlights something very, very special, a wonderful collaboration between the Audrain and our good friend Murray Smith, a brilliant man, a collector of the first order, who has loaned to this exhibition an extraordinary and world-class collection of original posters from the Monaco Grand Prix, as well as a number of other Monaco exhibitions and events throughout the years. This is an exhibition that you definitely want to come back to more than once. And this introductory video will just scrape across the top of it. We'll be coming back to you, as we always do, with other videos here on the Audrain Museum Network to dive in a little deeper in all these cars and find out why they're here and what makes them so special. To help tell this story, I'm joined by my good friend Nick Waller, the president of the Audrain Automobile Museum. Welcome, Nick.
Hello, Donald. Nice to see you.
Good to see you as well. This is so incredibly exciting.
I, have been and seen so many of the exhibits that the Audrain Museum have put on. This, to me, now is the pinnacle. We have excelled with this exhibit. I think every single piece in it, from posters to cars to ephemera to the automobilia, what a show. I mean, quite seriously, something unrepeatable.
Well, we'll go through this show and then we'll go even higher. We'll set the bar even higher for ourselves. But this is a remarkable show. And it also, again, is one of those great attributes of the Audrain that I think the Audrain excels at, quite frankly, which is bringing the very familiar with the totally new.
Yes.
I think that anyone who walks through the gallery doors or watches the video here on the network will see cars that they know about, cars they've heard about, and then cars they've never seen before in their lives. And hopefully we'll give them a little bit more information about the cars they know to add to the richness of their automotive experience.
Absolutely.
We're standing here just with the three cars in the shot right now are amazing. This incredible 1927 Bugatti Type 37A. We've got this 1937 Bugatti Type 57 and the incredible 1956 Maserati 250F.
And what I think is so interesting and what we've managed to pull together is that we're telling a story. We're telling a story of the history of Monaco and its relationship with the automobile and the race, of course. And we're telling that story, spreading it into the rally and other Concours events as well. And it takes us right from the very beginning, almost to the present day. That's what's so exciting.
And to do that with these great cars, which are loaned to us from many great friends of the Audrain, some of the leading collectors in the world, as well as some great highlights from the Audrain collections itself. They're all brought together and tied together with these posters. I mean, just to walk into the gallery and see the color and the art, it's a reminder that there's still great graphic work being done today. But there was a time when a poster had to tell a story about an event very quickly and very boldly.
Yeah.
And you see this going back to 1929.
Absolutely. We could look at this exhibition as actually telling the story of poster design. Because right from the very beginnings, the very early 20s, all the way through to the modern 60s, 1970s, when it was much more postery and in your face, but it tells the story of design and graphic design through the poster art.
And they capture the spirit of the events, the Grand Prix races, the rallies, and of course, these cars themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, the cars in the museum, I'm sure you recall a few years ago when we had that wonderful exhibition, Engineering plus Design equals Passion, the
Yes.
Nick Begovic collection.
Yes.
And Nick Begovic challenged us, quite frankly, from beyond, that exhibitions in a museum shouldn't just show cars parked, because why are they there?
Yeah.
You need to know why they're there and what makes them special.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to do with this show. And I think seeing all these cars together really gives you an idea of the incredible power of the history of sport in a very small place, Monaco.
The smallest town, the smallest country in the world.
Well, we've talked about these Bugattis. Oh, one of the other things, very important, is the fact that we know about the Grand Prix race, started in 1929,
Yes.
but there was actually a Concours d'Elegance held in Monaco before, that predates the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful thing. So we've got this incredible sporting Type 37A, and we have this incredibly elegant Type 57, which actually was featured in a concours in Monaco.
Yeah.
So this tells you already immediately, as soon as you walk through the door, the range.
Well, it tells how the Monegasques, the people that lived in Monaco, how they could spend their time throughout the year. They were down in one of the most beautiful places on the Mediterranean. They had to have things to do. So they would have dog shows, they would have regattas, sailing, motorsport on the water, speedboats, cars, everything that went together to really excite the population.
Absolutely. And let's take another look at those incredibly romantic and incredibly dangerous pre-World War II times in Monaco. Let's take a look at a pair of extraordinary Alfa Romeos.
Oh, let's do it.
Now, one of the most picturesque and evocative periods of Grand Prix racing in Monaco was the 1930s. And although, you hear I'm a big Formula One addict, and when you hear people talk about how big the cars are, the Formula One cars, to run at Monaco, and the streets seem so tight and small, but you think about the cars like these two Alfa Romeos, this 1933 Alfa Romeo and that 1935 Alfa Romeo, running on the streets of Monaco. Yes, before there was Armco, but there were actually curbs, stone curbs, and you would see the drivers position their car in four-wheel drifts just to get on the outside of the curbs.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable. And when you think about what was happened in just a few years, when you had the giant Mercedes and Auto Union cars with all of that horsepower and all of that speed on these tiny streets, what's old is new, and what's new is old. It's always been that way in Monaco.
It's very true. Cars were developed for a multitude of circuit racing. So the Monaco has always been the odd one out, if you like. So if you design a car for Monaco, it'll never work anywhere else. So you have to compromise. But, as you say, the safety element wasn't even an issue, and it really wasn't an issue until the late 1950s. So yeah, imagine driving one of these two cars in the 1930s, what a period to be alive, and racing against the best teams from around the world.
One of the things that also this exhibition reminds us of is the fact that Monaco has a great history, but also a great present, because I have been, I'm sure as you have, been fortunate enough to attend the Monaco historic Grand Prix, and you get to see some of these cars of this age on the streets of Monaco today, and it's still an extraordinary thing. And again, thinking about the development, we love to talk about the development of the automobile here at the Audrain. And looking at these two Alfa Romeos, you would think, well, this one's obviously from the early 20s, and that one must be from the late 30s. They're 2 years apart.
Exactly. Of course, these two Alfas tell such an immense story, both driven by probably one of the greatest drivers of all time, Tazio.
Tazio. 'Nuvolari. 'Nuvolari.
Tazio drove both these cars over a period of 2 years. The Monza that is sitting behind me in 1933, 1932, 1933, when the Monza race was supreme at most circuits around the world, and also in longer distance races as well, because it was an all-purpose motor car. And of course, you have to think politically. What was happening in the world in the mid-1930s?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Europe was in turmoil, was in crisis. The might of Germany wanted to dominate in sport, the Olympics, and in Grand Prix racing. Along come the Auto Union, along come Mercedes with German state backing. Any money was available. Any amount was spent on these two cars, which threw little old Alfa Romeo into turmoil.
It's a story that actually we'll tell in the highlights video when we come to these cars, but just looking at these two cars, the fact that in 2 years you can tell what Alfa Romeo was forced to do to answer the threat from Germany, and that 1935 car would be, unfortunately, the last competitive Alfa Romeo in Grand Prix racing until after World War II.
Yes.
But more on that and the heroics of our dear friend Tatsu Nuvolari later.
Yeah.
But it is, again, just this idea of the spirit of these cars. And now we're going to take yet another leap forward. And I know that this is where the story gets really interesting for you as a Brit and less so interesting for me as an Italophile. But let's look at another great change in open-wheel Grand Prix racing.
The one change that revolutionized the sport.
Amazing. Oh, let's take a look. So, Nick, we have got 3 cars here that are so important in the history of open-wheel racing, Grand Prix racing. And Monaco, of course, was a showcase for this, with the dominant front-engine cars yielding to totally new ideas and technologies.
Indeed. From 1956 with the 250F, the Maserati, beautiful car driven by anybody who's everybody who's anybody, rather. Through to a car that was developed by Porsche for a Grand Prix driver called Jean Bera. And Jean Bera brought forward the rear engine design.
Heresy at the time.
Heresy. Who would have thought? And then, of course, with the 1959 Cooper Type 51. Heralded a massive change and were dominant for year after year after year.
It's a very interesting thing, as we saw with the Alfa Romeos, the way that competition forces change is something that always has made open-wheel Grand Prix racing such an incredibly interesting sport, because we can see the development of cars and how the dynamic capabilities make them more suited to the competition effects that they need to make. And also, as you mentioned before, for me, there's nothing like the beauty of these front-engine Grand Prix cars from the 1950s. And it's interesting to see how we've come to today's cars, which are all rear mid-engined, and that is the formula.
Yeah. But you can also see, especially with these two cars, the importance at the time was nationality and international colors. Red for Italy, blue for Jean Bera, the Jean Bera Porsche, green for British cars. That was about to change as well.
Absolutely astonishing. And while we're talking about the various formulas, Formula 1, Formula 2, we're going to take a look at yet another formula that a lot of people might not be familiar with. Let's take a look at those guys. Now, most people think of Formula 1 and very big, very fast cars when it comes to racing in Monaco, open-wheel cars. We're with 3 cars that don't quite fit that brief. They sort of seem like slightly miniature Formula 1 cars.
Which is exactly really what they are. Smaller engined. I mean, the design you can see with the Stangalini that you're sitting on, very much like the Lotus 18, the Maserati 250F that were in the Grand Prix cars in the late 1950s. This was the Formula Junior. This was the introductory class for motor racing. Cheap to run, easy to fix, easy to work on, but great fun and very speedy. And it saw many, many drivers come to the fore, I think.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we'll get into during the highlights video that covers these cars is the fact that today, I keep coming back to the conversation about Formula One today and the current formula for the hybrid V6s. And the people that complain about the sound and all of this, Formula One has always changed formulas. And there are periods of time when the feeder series for Formula One used to be F2.
Yes.
And there were times when F2 regulations and qualifications became those for F1.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting that these cars, these Formula Junior cars, also came from a place where they wanted to see, again, it's a nationalistic thing. It was sort of an Italian invention because of the great success of the British manufacturers in the 500cc class.
Yep.
And it really was incredibly dynamic, and today it's still a vibrant veteran vintage car racing scene.
If you want to go historic racing today, get into Formula Junior. There is a circus that travels the world, goes to all the great circuits, and have races throughout the season. And really, I think this was the link to Monaco. In 1959, 1960, along came the Formula Juniors, and they were given their own race. Before the Grand Prix took off on the Sunday, they were racing on the Saturday and in the morning on the Sunday at Monaco. So they had their place in the whole Monaco story.
Absolutely, and we've got here two Italian cars, as you mentioned, the Stangolini and an Oscar, and an English car, the Lotus 18. Now, there's another story there, which we won't get into right now, but we're going to talk a little bit more about, with the next cars that we look at, a certain evolution that we alluded to when talking about the Alfa Romeo.
Exactly right. It's a temptation to talk about it now, but I'm not going to.
Be patient.
No.
Be patient. It'll come back. Let's take a look. The Monte Carlo Rally is and was as important to the history of motorsports in Monte Carlo as the Grand Prix racing. And to talk about that and the very special collaboration that makes this exhibition so special, I am joined by my friend David DiMuzio, the Executive Director and Chief Curator of the Audrain.
Hey, Donald.
David, I know this is an exhibition that we've talked about for a very long time, and I know that both of us are really excited this came together. But before we start to talk about what that special connection is here with the collaboration, the rally, the Monte Carlo Rally, I mean, frankly, I was never going to be a Grand Prix driver, a Formula One driver, but with the Monte Carlo Rally, you can actually sort of imagine yourself in the place of those drivers. And to think about, especially in this period, in the 1950s, when cars like this 300 SL Gullwing and this Lancia Aurelia B20 ran the rally, it was an amazing thing, sort of the last vestige of the great city-to-city races. You know, people started at various points all over Europe and came to Monaco.
Exactly what I think of it. It's really an endurance race. It's not as intense as we think of rally today, but the idea of so this starts back in the early 20th century. So I mean, before the Grand Prix, the rally was a really impressive event. I mean, it was an endurance event.
Absolutely, and for a manufacturer to win a cup in an Alpine trial in the Monte Carlo Rally was a very, very big thing that they used in advertising and marketing, because it meant a lot about the durability and desirability of your car.
In those early days, they looked like street cars more than race cars. So I think that was an advantage for the manufacturer in advertising.
Yeah, we'll see, we'll talk about what that early rallying, actually this is sort of mid-period because the rally started well before the Grand Prix race, was like in our exhibition highlights video. But I now do want to take a moment, I alluded to it a little earlier, the fact that this is a very special exhibition because of the collaboration with Murray Smith. Now, I know that you and I love collaborations, and the collaborations which we did with the Historical Society here in Newport with Women Take the Wheel, and with the Herreshoff and Mystic Seaport Museum with Wonders in Wood. It is so exciting to be able to share collections from other people and have them enhance our presentation of cars. So tell me about working with Murray and selecting this amazing assortment of posters.
It was incredible, and I honestly didn't know Murray very well until we got to the point of actually saying, yes, we're going to do this. And he quickly became what I really consider part of the curatorial team. He helped us choose cars. He knew where some of these race cars were that would be good to have in the show. But even more importantly, and what really drew me to the exhibition, having come from an art museum background, is the tremendous collection of period posters and race ephemera that Murray has collected over the last 50 years. And it's all in his home here in Newport, wonderfully displayed. So I felt a little bad because we took a lot of stuff out of the house that's now in the gallery for the next 3 months. But he has a really keen eye for artwork, and it's not just race related. He collects other kinds of art as well. We have a wonderful painting he commissioned of the Maserati when he owned it back in the day. So yeah, two of the cars here he actually owned and raced in historics, and another car that he drove for the Revs. So he has a really unique perspective because he was there in the period. He knew all the players and the famous race car drivers. We also have a tremendous collection of plaques and participants medals that I've never seen. And he literally has a program, a medal from every year of Monaco races, Rally, Concours, Grand Prix, even Le Mans, same thing. Just a really interesting, really in-depth collection of material related to these races. And in addition to that, in the middle of this, he donates to the museum a 2,000 plus volume library, primarily of race related things. So now we have that in the collection to use as reference. He has been an asset in a way I could never have imagined. And he's so much fun to work with, and the stories that come out of this 87-year-old man are just wonderful.
Murray has been a great friend of mine and a wonderful friend to the Audrain for a very long time. And let's hear in his own words what these posters mean to him, and how he started to collect them.
Well, you know, Monaco is a pretty dramatic spot, and I remember going very early to watch a race at Monaco with some friends of mine, and I thought it was absolutely terrific. And then I found the posters and the badges and all, and they're pretty, well designed and difficult to find elsewhere. And I just started collecting them. And then I started collecting other things as well, like Le Mans posters, which I've also got a pile of. But that's what I went for. The first of Monaco poster I bought, I really, I'd be lying if I told you, but I think probably this one here. I was very impressed with that. Or this one up here, because that's the race that my friend René Dreyfus won, and so I would have probably gone for that early on. I was in Monaco with Gregorio Rossi, who used to own Martini and Rossi, and we went up to a poster shop halfway up in the town, and we bought some posters that day. That was the start of it. So I would say that was in the sort of early 70s.
Well, David, this is going to be an exhibition that is going to amaze everyone who walks through the doors of the gallery and who watches these videos here on the Audrain YouTube network and catches this exhibition on the Bloomberg Connect app. This is absolutely extraordinary, and I have to congratulate you on an extraordinary job. Extremely well done.
It's going to be very well received, I just know it.
Thanks. We saw some of the early rally cars for the Monte Carlo Rally, and now to take us a bit into what probably is one of my favorite periods of Monte Carlo rallying, we are joined by my friend, Mr. Ben Chester.
Thank you, Donald.
3 very exciting cars here. I know these cars talk to you the way they talk to me.
Of course, of course.
What do we got here?
This is a 1973 Renault Alpine A110. This is a Lancia Delta S4. These are 2 of the most iconic looking cars of all time, as it's easy to tell, but also 2 of the best performers on anything but tarmac in the history of the world.
Now, you have to be fair. There's a 3rd car in this shop, which we should not ignore, even though it's not quite as sexy and exciting as these 2 cars. But it was certainly a successful one, the Ford Cortina.
Yes.
And the Ford Lotus Cortina was also a car that was successful in rallies as well as circuit racing. And I know when we come back and do the highlights video, we'll really get into these cars, but these just look, as the Brits say, the business. I mean, you look at them and you know what they're designed to do. Go as sideways as quickly as possible.
Absolutely, and all 3 of these cars did it in very different ways. Obviously the Lotus with a front engine rear wheel drive layout, this Alpine with a true rear engine rear wheel drive layout, which helped on slippery surfaces obviously. And then the best of all worlds, the all-wheel drive, twin-charged, mid-engine hatchback Lancia. I mean, it's the stuff of dreams, and this is what got so many thousands of people interested in motorsport.
And it's also something to think about the fact that although the modern Monte Carlo Rally, which is still an incredibly demanding event, at this period of time, they were still doing the distance starts. So thinking about coming across a third of Europe in one of these cars before arriving at the mountain passes over Monaco. So the abilities of these drivers and co-drivers, and the co-drivers, it's actually a very funny thing, because you hear the term co-driver and you think, oh, he's the guy that sort of sits next to it and sort of does his nails while the driver does all the work, which is not the case in rally championship driving.
No, absolutely not. And to me, from my perspective, the co-driver is the harder job, because growing up as a kid playing my Game Boy Color in the back seat of a Chevy Tahoe did not go well. There was usually vomit on the seats. So being able to adjust and keep up with your notes as you're going over crests and oversteering and hard braking into the harnesses is extremely difficult, where the driver really is just going with their guts.
And they have to have, you talk about a team effort. A driver has to have complete confidence in his co-driver.
Of course.
Or her co-driver. Because they are going to do whatever that person says they're going to do. If that person says, this next stretch is top gear, flat out, going to a 3rd gear left turn, that's what they're going to do.
Right, and being real world stages, they don't get out and do a track walk, right? So the co-driver has to be completely confident in their notes to then be completely confident in their communication delivery. So the team effort aspect of the racing, I don't think is talked about enough, but these liveries are certainly make up the discussion.
It is a very interesting thing as well, because we often talk about sponsorship and other credits in racing. And to see one of these rally cars, I don't think you could possibly fit another sticker on any of these cars. It's absolutely astonishing. You think about what a sponsor pays for, visibility. Can you imagine you paid X number of dollars, francs, euros, marks, whatever it is, lira, and you've got your name right there on the door, and it's now covered with mud, and the car is sliding sideways.
Well, that's the name of the game, but these cars got a lot of publicity then. They still do. And looking at these brands, just on the side next to us, probably half, if not more of them, are still making amazing products today.
Well, this is an area that I'm really, really, really excited to dive into. And when we talk about this, I'm going to do my best. I know that Ben is going to do his best to guide me away so I don't just talk about the Lancia, which I just want to do. But sorry. But whether it's the rallying of the 1930s, the 1940s, 1950s, 60s, or here into the 80s, the Monte Carlo rally scene was an absolutely astonishing one, and very much as important as the Grand Prix that everyone thinks about. So thanks a lot, Ben, and we'll be back to visit. final look in this exhibition preview video is at two iconic modern Formula One cars. The incredibly historic McLaren Honda MP4 and the very noted Ferrari F310B.
It's very political of you.
Well, it's a very funny thing. I mean, again, we'll get into this when we do the deep dive, but each of these cars is extremely well known by people who follow Formula One. One for a reason perhaps not the greatest, the other for the fact that it held a record which was only just broken by Red Bull Racing.
Right.
These cars, the MP44s, were the winningest Formula One cars ever built until the RB20.
You say incredibly historic, you call it legendary. I don't think there are words to describe how seriously dominant the MP4 was. It was the winningest car, as you said, until very recently. And it just dominated the sport. The technology was ahead of its time. The aerodynamics were ahead of the competition. The drivers who drove these cars were ahead of the pack. When you add all of that up together, you have a car that basically refused to lose.
It was an amazing thing, and when you think about the fact that both of these cars, the Ferrari and the McLaren, come from manufacturers and rather constructors at a time when they had a terrific lineup. In the case of Ferrari, they were just about to start their era of domination with Schumacher, and ably partnered by Eddie Irvine, who also drove this chassis. And people often don't remember that Eddie Irvine was almost world champion after Schumacher dropped out and after breaking his legs at Silverstone. So these cars were driven by incredibly capable drivers, but as you said, the MP44, you had the best chassis, the best engine, and the two best drivers in the world, Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna.
Oh, of course.
I don't know why anybody else showed up to race.
Well, and it's, this is a car that you can put in the gallery by itself, and we would still have patrons come and see it. This is taking nothing away from the F310B. The F310B comes from the most dramatic era, in my opinion, of Formula One cars. They sounded the best. They were extremely quick. They were all flashy. Obviously, the infamous moment that the F310B is known for is quite unfortunate. As we all know, that's not this chassis, or else it wouldn't be in the room, but absolutely fantastic era. Schumacher was dominant in this period as well. These cars were all over the posters as they were driving so well, but this MP4 is the best of the best.
And for this exhibition, the Magic of Monaco, there are few cars in the world that exemplify the Magic of Monaco more than Alain Prost's Monaco Grand Prix winning MP44.
Yeah.
It just gives me the shivers to say that.
It gives me the shivers too, and we're so proud to have Prost's car, and we love talking about it and showing it, and we've taken it to Goodwood, and Senna's iconic drive at Monaco was in the race that this car won, and if it wasn't for Senna's mishap, we wouldn't have a Monaco champion in our room, but that's fate.
It's the stories these cars tell. Thanks so much, Ben.
Thanks, Donald.
Can't wait to come back and dive more.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us for this preview of our exhibition, The Magic of Monaco, December 14th, 2024 through March 9th, 2025. We hope to see you here in the gallery on Bellevue Avenue in Newport, here on the Audrain Museum Network for our exhibition highlights video, or on the Bloomberg Connect app. Thanks for joining us, and we can't wait to see you again.